I'm going to show you how to implement this using RevenueCat. Let's get started. Hi, I'm Megan, and in today's video, I am going to show you how to implement RevenueCat in a SwiftUI app. We're going to be using Magic Weather, which is RevenueCat's sample app, so that you can follow along. There are a few prerequisites needed, like a RevenueCat account, which you can sign up for at RevenueCat.com. An app configured in App Store Connect. Since we're using SwiftUI, we're making an iOS app, so therefore Apple's App Store Connect. Configured products in App Store Connect. An Apple Sandbox test user account to test in-app purchases with. And then, of course, the Magic Weather repo cloned if you want to follow along. So before we completely hop into Xcode, we need to really configure the product, entitlement, and offerings for Magic Weather inside RevenueCat. Let's hop into our dashboard and go configure those. Now, a product is the item a user will actually purchase. So this is what Apple uses to keep track of what's been purchased. These are the products that you have configured inside App Store Connect. They also have to be configured inside RevenueCat so that RevenueCat knows which products to associate with the purchase. Now we need to go add a new product to RevenueCat with the same product ID. So inside RevenueCat's dashboard, hit the plus new to add a new product, copy the product ID from the App Store Connect and paste it into the identifier field and make sure the iOS app is selected. And that's all it took to do the product. Next, we'll configure the entitlement, which is what the user unlocks when they actually make the purchase. So we're going to go to entitlements, hit the add new, call the entitlement pro, and call it done. Once we give it the entitlement and identifier of pro, we also need to associate the products with it. So click on where it says 0 products. There is the attach button. So go ahead and click on attach and then choose the product we just configured from the dropdown. And now we're going to configure the offerings. This is the set of products that a user will be presented on a paywall. To configure an offering, go ahead and click on offerings, hit the plus new button as we've been doing for the last two. Give whatever identifier you want to this offering. Now this is what the offering will be considered inside the app. So this is important to take note of. Don't worry, we can always come back and then copy paste later. Give it a description. That way you know what this offering actually is. And give it an associated of packages. The packages are the products that are associated with this offering. So again, for us, this is going to be the annual pack product. And now that we have all this configured, really before we start coding, I kind of want to do an overview of the app. That way you know exactly what we're building. So here it is. It is a weather app. It has a bunch of built-in weather. The user can just change the weather with a click of a button. And man, how I wish I could do that in Texas right now. It is way too hot. The user can also log in and log out, which is a feature of RevenueCat. And of course, you can restore purchases. All right, so inside the code, once you open the Xcode workspace for Magic Weather SwiftUI and you go into the shared folder, you're immediately hit with three things: your constants, your sources, and your assets. We're only going to worry about constants and sources in this case. Your constants is going to be where you put your API key and your entitlement ID. We didn't really talk about where to grab your API key, but that is on your dashboard, and I will show you in just a minute. That entitlement ID is exactly that entitlement ID we made a little bit ago. Then inside sources, this is going to be where you write all your Swift. Your life cycle is where your app actually begins. This will also hold a delegate handler for us, so our app can update when RevenueCat actually gets some updates. Then you have the different views. So your content view, which is going to hold your navigation, your weather view, which holds that nice little weather UI that allows you to change the weather, and your user view, which allows you to log in, log out, see your current identifier. Also, it allows you to restore your purchases. And then there's your paywall view. Your paywall view is exactly as it sounds. That is where your paywall is going to be shown to the user. So that's where you start getting all nice and fancy with that UI. and you present those packages with the proper titles, like display titles and prices to the user so that they convert over to a paying user. Now there's a couple more files in here that we also need to pay attention to, and those live inside the view models and the helpers folders. So the view models, they handle basically all the logic inside the view. The weather view model is going to just handle whatever the current weather is, and the user view model is going to be where everything happens for RevenueCat, basically. So your customer info. This is going to be what holds the customer identifier, the customer subscription status. Then you have the offerings, and this is going to be what's presented on that paywall screen. Your subscription active variable, that's just going to come directly from the customer info, which we'll set in just a second. And then at the end there where that warning is, these are your logins and your logout functions for RevenueCat. And finally, the very last thing you have is the helpers. So inside the sample data helper, that is going to be just sample weather data, how we get the emoji, how we show the emojis. Then the extensions file are going to be a couple nifty extensions that I actually throw into my own apps. So you have an extension on the package, which helps get the free trial or the introductory price string if you don't have a free trial. And also, there's also an extension for the subscription period, which allows you to just output like a day, week, month, year, and then to make them plural also. These are just a couple little helpers to make life a little bit easier so you don't have to just keep typing it out all the time in case you have multiple paywalls that you want to show inside the app. Now it's time to code, so let's get RevenueCat actually installed using Swift Package Manager. So go to your project file, scroll down to Frameworks, hit that plus button, then choose Add Other, add that package dependency. So in that search field, let's go ahead and put the GitHub link to the purchases repository. Again, that link's going to be in the description below, and adjust the dependency rule to be from branch to up to next major version. Make sure that says 4.0 to 5.0, and make sure you're adding it to the project Magic Weather SwiftUI. Then hit add package one more time, and there we go, it's installed. All right, so next we're gonna do is actually go back into that constants file where I mentioned there's the API key and the entitlement ID, and let's go fill those in, especially because those have errors associated with them. So let's get that API key from the RevenueCat dashboard. Go into the API keys section, make sure you hit the little I on the key for the Apple app, copy that key, and then you're gonna paste it into the Xcode file. And then go ahead and comment out that error, or just go ahead and delete that error. Next, we're going to get that entitlement ID. I know it's pro, so I'm just going to fill it in here. If you don't remember what your entitlement ID is, just go back to your dashboard, go to entitlements, and copy that entitlement ID. Now we're going to go into that main file, the Magic Weather app, in that lifecycle folder. And in that main struct there, we're going to add an init. That init is going to be where RevenueCat actually gets configured. Before we add anything into the initializer, make sure you remember to import RevenueCat. So inside the initializer, let's set our log level. To set our log level, hit purchases.log level and set it to debug. That way, in the console, there's lots of messages so we can see exactly what's happening at any point in that time in our app. Now we need to actually configure purchases with a builder because we want to get it configured with the proper API. And then we also want to make sure we're using StoreKit2 if available. So if the app is able to support StoreKit2, you want to mark that as true. There's some nice things that happened with StoreKit2. So let's just make sure we always use the latest and greatest if it's available. Just do a little formatting. And finally, what we're going to do is make a purchases.shareDelegate. We need to make sure that purchases.shareDelegate has an actual delegate that we assign so that our app can react to the changes on the RevenueCat server. After we put in the purchase.delegate.handler.shared, there's going to be an error, and that's okay because we're going to go fix this error right now. The first thing we need to do to fix this error is actually make a whole new Swift file called purchases delegate handler. First things first, let's make a new class called purchases delegate handler and conform that class to an NS object, observable object. Then we're going to make a static constant called shared that basically just initializes that class. And finally, let's make an extension on that class. And that extension is going to conform to purchases delegate. So now we're going to make a function called purchases. And that purchases is going to take in a purchases type, so what purchases were being made, and then also a customer info property. Now inside this function, the very first thing we're going to do is set that user view model customer info to the customer info that we just received inside this function. And don't worry, there's an error, but that's because we need to go update the user view model after this. Next, we need to fix these errors real quick. Let's hop into the user view model and see what we need to fix. I bet you can guess what the very first thing we need to do inside this file, and that is import RevenueCat. So let's go ahead and import RevenueCat at the top because we need our customer info to have the type of customer info, and we need that offerings to have the type of offerings. And to do that, we need to have RevenueCat imported. Now let's change the customer info type from Boolean equals false to customer info. And we're going to set that to an optional purely because we won't have a customer info instance until the app has launched. Then we're going to go inside this publish variable and say every time this publish variable changes, we're actually going to set the subscription active publish variable at the same time. The RevenueCat makes this easy to check if the entitlement is set to active by going into that customer info object, checking the entitlement based on the ID that we set in that constants file, and then seeing if that value for is active is actually active or not. And it checks out to be true, then we set subscription active to true. If it's not true, then we set it to false. Now we need to go change that variable for the offerings. So we're going to set that to an offerings type and actually make it an optional and equal to nil also. Again, purely because we won't have these until the app has launched. To populate those variables, we need to go to the magic weather abstract where the app main property wrapper is set. And on content view, right underneath the .preferred color scheme, we need to actually add in a task because we're going to be using RevenueCat's async await features to actually populate those variables. So after preferred color scheme, hit .task, and then you use the autocomplete to use code. And then in there, we're going to put in our do catch block. I like to fill in the catch block first. So we're going to type in catch, error, and we know that we're going to just be super simple here, print out the error, whatever it is. In this case, it's an error fetching the offerings. And then in the do block is where we actually configure those inside the user view model. So user view model dot shared offerings equals try await purchases dot shared dot offerings. Because once the app grabs those offerings, everything else is set with that purchase delegate handler to update the current user. And that is the magic of using delegate handlers like that so that it can just update when RevenueCat updates its cache. All right, so now inside paywall view, let's go ahead and show those offerings to the user. We're going to go ahead and set a private variable that can only be really set inside this file is what we're going to do. So private set var offering, we're going to set this equal to, we're going to set the type of offering to be an optional offering, and it's going to be equal to the user view model dot shared dot offerings dot current. Remember, the offering is what holds each of our packages that we're actually presenting to the user. So now what we need to do is actually show those packages to the user. So inside our view, inside our var body, in the list, there's a section that already has a header, a text, and it says Magic Weather Premium, and there's a nifty little comment that says package and purchase logic goes here. So to display the packages that are actually inside offerings, what we need to do is iterate through the available packages inside offerings And if there is not an available package inside the offering, then we're just going to iterate through an empty array so that we don't actually show any package view cell whatsoever. Now, for each package that is inside the available package, we want to display the package view cell. So after you put in the package cell view, you might notice that there's actually an error inside package cell view because it doesn't know what packages are. Before we continue, go ahead and just put quotes around that to make it a string so that we can actually run the app and see what's going on. So as we can see here, we have actually a package here now to present, which is the one offering that we set up in that RevenueCat dashboard. But you notice that there wasn't a price or anything else really associated with it. That's because we're not getting anything dynamically brought in. So let's go fix that real quick. Going back to that paywall view, we want there to be a constant of the package. That way we can grab the package's local price, what the package title is, and also what the package details are. And we have that error about the missing argument for the package. So let's go ahead and add in package. So now that we have that error taken care of, let's actually set the title, details, and price to be dynamic. So changing the text from package title to package.storeproduct.localized title. That we want to make sure we choose all the localized options. That way, if you have users in multiple countries, they get the proper title, proper price, proper description. Now, instead of package details, we're going to be using that extension to get the actual terms of this subscription. Now, after setting the package terms, let's go ahead and show that localized price. So package.storeproduct.localized price this time. Now running the app again, you'll see the Pro unlocks premium and that is bringing in that $10.99 price. So the next thing that we need to do is actually make that tappable, because right now it's just a nice, pretty little rectangle that shows our subscription information. Let's make that tappable by using a closure that triggers when you hit the rectangle. The first thing we need to do to make this package view cell tappable is to actually add a on-tap gesture to the view itself, to the body. So dot on-tap gesture. So in there, we're going to put on selection, which we haven't defined yet, and we're going to pass in the package. Then let's go ahead and define on selection. So let on selection, it's going to take in a package and then return void so that it can be that completion handler that we have here. After package view cell, we'll see that we're missing arguments for the parameter on select. So let's go ahead and pass those in and make a closure package, and we're going to pass in a package. And inside this closure, we're going to have some logic here. We're going to toggle is purchasing to true, which is purchasing is a variable up at the top that triggers a nice little darkness of rectangle just behind to make it a little bit more dim when the purchase flow is actually happening. Then we actually need to call RevenueCat to make the purchase. So we're going to do purchases.shared.purchase with a package and completion handler. So we need to pass in the package, and then inside the completion handler, we're going to take the transaction info, error, and user canceled. And those variables are going to be used to determine if the user actually has successfully purchased the product, or if the user has actually canceled out or there was some kind of error, whether on RevenueCat's end or Apple's end. So the first thing we're going to do is set the purchasing to false. That way that darkness will go away as we're inside the flow, because we'd be done with the flow by the time we get this info. So now we need to check to see if the user actually has the entitlement at this point. And the easiest way to do that is to actually just check that info inside this closure and see if the entitlement is actually active. And then we want to use that entitlement constant that we declared earlier just to make sure we're actually utilizing the right string here. And there's not a guarantee that this entitlement actually exists, so we're just going to keep it as nil. Grab the is active value, so that could either be true or false, and we want to know if it's true or not. And if it's true, then we want to just close the paywall by setting is presented to false. And that's all we have to do if the user has successfully purchased the package. Now, what happens if the user has canceled or there's some kind of error? Well, let's handle that. So in the else block, we're going to check to see if the error actually exists. And if it does, then we're going to go ahead and set that to that state variable error. And then we need to actually display the error. So let's change self.displayError equal to true. And that's all we have to do to actually handle the purchase logic. All right, so now let's run through this on my device real quick. So running the app, when I tap on change weather, the pro screen comes up. I tap on pro, then it brings up the sandbox with the subscribe. I type in my password, hit sign in. Great, the purchase was successful. Now if I tap on change the weather, I get to change the weather through all the things again. Next thing we're going to do is implement the user view so that we can see what our current user ID is, which normally you don't show, but we're going to in this case, just so that you can actually see what's happening on device and see how to implement a very simple login, logout feature inside RevenueCat. So let's go into the user view file, and inside that user view file, the very first thing we're going to do is import RevenueCat as we have done in the paywall view. And inside this user view where it says app user ID, let's actually grab what the app user ID is from RevenueCat. So purchases.shared.app user ID is going to present that app user ID. Now, if we go on the simulator here, what we'll see inside the user info tab is the anonymous RevenueCat user identifier. The next thing we should implement is a UI to support logging in and logging out. So if the user's logged in, we need to allow them to log out. And if the user's logged out, then we need to allow them to enter the app user ID and then log in so that they can see their current user ID. So in this authentication UI, it's going to be very simple. It's going to consist of a logout button, which, like I said, if the user is not logged in, so we can actually check if the user is anonymous or not according to RevenueCat. So if purchases.shared.is anonymous, and we're going to set that, say if it's false, meaning that they are logged in and have a app user ID, we're going to present a logout button. So inside this button, we're going to call the logout function from the user view model. Go ahead, and we're going to add a little bit of styling just to make it like a little flashy on the screen here. Now else, if the user is logged in and aka not anonymous, then we're going to present a text with a login, give it a little bit of styling, a headline there, a little bit of padding. And then we're going to add in a text field that allows the user to put in their user ID. And then on edit, we're not going to do anything. So while we're editing the text field, nothing's going to happen. So what we're going to do when the user hits enter on commit, we're going to check and make sure that the new user ID is not empty, because if it is, then nothing needs to happen. And then we're going to call the login function from the model and pass in the new user ID. So that gets set in RevenueCat system. Again, just a little bit more styling there. So here's what it looks like when I run on device. So we get the current user identifier. Then I can type in my name. And once I hit enter, the current user identifier is Megan and my subscription status is active since I just made that purchase. And the last piece to the puzzle when handling in-app subscriptions is to restore your purchases. So to restore your purchases, what we're going to do is go still inside that user view model. You can see that there's a button there called restore purchases. We're going to make one simple call to purchases to restore that purchase. So erase print restore purchases and then type in purchases.shared.restore purchases. Go ahead and pass in a completion of nil. And that's it. That's how you restore purchases. Thanks so much for watching. If you made it this far, make sure to like and subscribe for more videos. And before you go, make sure you head over to RevenueCat.com to get started for free.